Boy, do I wish I had this tool when I first started. When I started my business, I really didn't have a clue on how to figure out, didn't have a real system of how to figure out my labor rate. I looked at the way other people were charging. I was saying, well, I could get close to that number and then just charge that rate. Well, that's not the way to do it. It's not a smart way to do it because it doesn't relate back to your own business finances, your specific business finances. And that's one of the fundamental things about this that's going to really help you out a lot, aside from the other factors that are on this spreadsheet that can get you close to, or if not, right on the button to where you should be charging in terms of labor rates. Because not everybody gets paid the same, and not all of your employees are going to be doing the same types of work. And you can break everything down here very simply just by following a number of rules. So this sheet that I've put together, I did over a number of years. I have many, many tools. This is one of the simplest ones that I was able to figure out after collaborating with some other folks, looking at the way that they calculated labor, discussing with accountants about how things work, discussing this with payroll companies. So I was able to nail things down. Once I knew how my own numbers work by understanding my own books, my expenses, and my employees, other expenses, paying rent or buying supplies, for the office, just different things. What's actually in your overhead, and how your overhead gets calculated into your labor rate, and how other factors calculate into your labor rate. So I broke down some of the basic features about a business when it comes to expenses and how to put that into this sheet. And you should be able to do this with a breeze. I'm giving this away for free because I want to be of service to you. I want you to learn something. It should save you a lot of time. And if you're a new business, use it. See how this works for you. Let me know down in the comments if this was very helpful for you, or if there's something in addition that you would like to see that I might be able to add here and share with others. So with that, let's get right into the tutorial. Okay, so to start on this sheet, one of the first things I want to tell you about is the chargeable hours. You have normally about 2,080 hours per year that's allocated for a full-time employee at about 40 hours per week. It might be less, they might be part-timers or whatever, but when you're looking at a full-time, you're starting out at 2080. If there are 40 hours a week, you give them 2 weeks vacation. Then there's the holidays, then there's training days, then there's sick days. There's all these hours that you still have to pay for that are non-productive. So in order to properly calculate that, that average will be about 440 hours per year, right? And that covers pretty much everything. So you wind up with about 1,640 hours for that employee, and I've already plugged in those numbers for you for the 10 employees listed here. And in this example, we're going to use one employee on line 1 here, and but before we even get into that employee, we have to discuss what your yearly overhead is. Your yearly overhead is going to be found on your profit and loss statement under expenses. Your total expenses. This is going to be for internal employee salaries. These are like administrators, managers, and even yourself. It's going to have those salaries in there. You're going to have your marketing, your rent, whatever other expenses that you normally would have for your office are going to be under that section of the profit and loss statement. So you take that total number, and we're going to use last year as an example, and let's say that number is 100,000. Right? We plug that number in there, and that's going to give you a projected overhead if you have, for each employee, right? So the average per employee that's going to be out in the field or doing some type of working in the factory, or the painter or the carpenter or the driver, whoever it might be, outside of the office, it was projected here as part of overhead. Because this overhead here also includes the internal personnel salaries and things like that. Then you're going to be paying that employee an hourly rate. So that would be, let's say, I'm just making up a number, $20 an hour, right? So that's going to populate a number of fields here, which include workers' compensation and employer contribution. Workers' compensation is normally about 7% of the employee's salary that you have to pay for. And then there's an employer contribution piece that comes into play there for taxes and for part of the payroll and stuff like that. So that total is about $3 and about $4.20, right? So that comes out to $24.20, right? Just with these three things. The hourly rate, workers' comp, and employer contribution. So you got that factored in here as a contractor rate. Now what happens is the overhead that you got from your yearly overhead down here comes into play, and that gets added into total current cost per hour for that employee, which is $85.18. So what a lot of people miss is, you're paying that person $20 an hour, but it's really costing you like $85 an hour, right? That's a huge difference. So somebody's got to pay for that, right? You're not just giving money away. So that's why you have to account for this for the employees that are going to be going out there making money for you, right? Because that's the money generator. And then, you have your internal salespeople and so forth, but whoever it is that's going to do the work is who's really making the money for you. And then we're looking at the next piece here, which is adjusting for gross profit margin. And I'm not talking about gross profit, right? Just make it a profit, right? You have to add profit on top of your expenses, your overhead, to add to the hourly rate that you're going to be charging a customer. But what most people do is multiply that number, right, which would be, let's say, 85.18 by 30, right? Or let's say if it's the 30% profit margin that they want to make, or profit that they want to make, they'll take that number and multiply by 1.3, let's say, for 30%. That's not how you want to do it. What you want to do is actually a little bit different, right? So the example that I give here to make it easy to understand is if this number here, the cost, the total current cost per hour per that employee is $100, and you want to make 30% gross profit margin, right, which is different than gross profit, you have to divide that by a number. And if it's going to be 30%, you would be dividing it by 0.7, right? So that number is going to appear here, right? So if you were to multiply $100 by 1.3, you would get $130 even. But it's not giving you any margin, not giving you any flexibility for something that may change, right? You have to make sure that you're making money. right? So what you would do is, this is the section here down to your bottom left where it says gross profit margin. And let's say we're going to stick with that. We're going to go with 30% gross profit margin. It's going to be, the number is going to be 0.7 that you're going to divide by. Right? Don't forget to put in the decimal point. So 0.7, and now you're going to see that for $85 is $121.68. That's with 30% gross profit margin on top of it. So this is the rate that you should really be charging. If we were to multiply that by 1.3, we're going to come out with less than that. It's probably going to be like 118 or 117, something like that. The next step here is, if you want to see how much better you're going to be doing, just to have the number present and showing than you did last year, right? Let's say last year, instead of charging, you were charging, let's say $95 an hour, right? This is a $26.68 difference, right? Because between 85.18 and 95, you really weren't making money. You're putting in a profit margin, that's really, really low. It's only like, $10. So your company's not going to survive that way. When you do this, now you're really seeing how much money you would be losing. And if you were to add that up, let's say that $26 amongst these 10 people, right, that would be $260 per hour that you would be making, right? So now you can take a look at that number and see if that's a reasonable number. As a matter of fact, it might be reasonable for some people, and some people it might be high. But your rates are your rates, and you shouldn't have to really have to justify what your rates are to your customer. If you want to stay within a certain price point that's compatible throughout the industry and with your competitors, you might want to bring down your gross profit margin a little bit, right? You can change this number down here. Let's say for you to make a 20% gross profit margin, if you can survive on that, right? So you would change that to a 0.8, right? And that number will go down, right? So then now you're making $11.47 gross profit margin over what you were making last year, right? So you can make some adjustments, but one of the things I always tell, especially new businesses, if you know your numbers, you don't have to justify your hourly rate. Your hourly rate is what it is for you to stay in business and to make money, because that's the whole point of you being in business. You don't have to rip people off, right? But you have to make money, and it has to be reasonable. And in some cases, your expenses, you might be a smaller company, and your expenses might be high. You might need to make that additional profit margin to keep yourself in business. But if you're going to be charging higher than what the industry rate would normally be, you better be doing really, really good work to earn the respect of your customers, or else they're going to come back with that question. But if they come back with that question, never justify your hourly rate, because it is what it is. If you're too expensive for them, then send them off to the next service provider, and tell them, say, well, you can go get your prices from someone else. This is what we do, what we provide based on our rate. And if you find that you don't like what they have to say, come back to us, and we'll entertain the discussion again and see how we can help you, because we're here to provide a service to you. So it's things like that. So, but that's a whole other discussion. But the industry should help you out a lot if you don't have anything like this. If you're just picking a number out of a hat, use real numbers, understand what your expenses are when you put the key in the door. What's it going to cost you per hour? And if you have 10 employees and you have all these different rates, how much you're paying, you're going to get this number right at the bottom here. Right now it's here we go. Let's say there's some numbers that are plugged in, but let's say it's 106 dollars, 106.47 for 10 employees. That number is going to be huge per hour. That number is going to be $1,000, $1,200, $2,000, right? It could be you might have different level employees, right? Specialties or what have you. So that's what you have to think about. But when you get up in the morning, the first thing is, before you even put that key in the door, this number down here is what it's costing you just to put the key in the door first thing in the morning. Don't forget to download your free copy of the labor rate calculator. Just follow the link below. And as I mentioned, it is totally free. I hope you get really good use out of it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave comments below and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more good stuff coming. I hope to see you soon. Thanks.